when we look at the Mannar Rune, this rune is all about us. It's all about us as humans. It's a rune of identity, a rune of you as the person and you as the roles you play. But here we're looking at humanity as a whole, as a principle perhaps. And we look and we see that certain things run true throughout humankind. Facial expressions. We can meet a person of any race, region, culture, and we can tell from a facial expression his mood. We know an angry face, we know a happy face, a fearful face, a contented face, a quizzical face. The same with language. We may not know the person's language, but by the way he is speaking, we can tell if he's happy, if he's exuberant, if he's afraid, if he's worried. It comes out in the tone of voice. And then there's gestures, body language. I remember when they first wrote that book about body language, I think it was in the late 60s, early 70s, and everyone was reading it to see if they could figure out a way to pick up girls. And there's part of our humanity, how we deal with the opposite sex. Our body language, however, tells us also, at a distance, if someone is agitated, if they're calm, if they're confident, if they're downtrodden. The way we walk, our posture, that says a lot of things. And then we get to sex, and this is where humanity is so hard to understand because there's such great variety. There are the prudish attitudes towards it, like you see, say, among Catholics, or the Amish, or the Muslims. And there are some cultures where it's more out in the open, a lot more wide open. I think of Thailand, guys who got stationed there would have some wild stories. So it varies so much. There are people who are strictly monogamous. There were some cases where people had more than one spouse. There were cases where people were just licentious, where you could go to the temple and perform your spiritual duties by having sex with one of the temple doxies. The religion, sex was part of it. There were some that were strictly monogamous, heterosexual, some that were tolerant of all sexual preferences, some only tolerant of a few. And you have swingers out there, and all sorts of varieties. So it's hard to say a single human sexual principle, because there is such variety, and there is no other sentient species against who we can compare ourselves to say, well, we're not this, we are this, as opposed to. We're the top species on the planet as far as we know. And so until we might find an alien species, that's going to be a tough nut to crack. We are the dominant species here. We are capable of abstract thought. We are capable of planning, building, and altering the planet greatly. We're capable of space flight. No other species can do that. We're capable of undersea exploration. The other air-breathing animals can't do what we can do undersea. And so part of our humanity is the fact that we can go beyond the limitations presented by our world, presented by our species. We can transcend them. We can put men and women into space. We can put men and women in the deep sea. We can put people in submarines to 7,000 feet underwater to the Marianas Trench. And there's something to think about. Abstract thinking. We're the only species that has concepts such as theology, philosophy. I don't think the bunny rabbits sit around having a philosophical discourse. Unless you're hallucinating and think you're talking to Bugs Bunny. There's people that do that. So our humanity has a transcendent element to it. I remember a book, I didn't read it, but I got bits and pieces where writer Heinlein, who was one of the most forward-thinking of the science fiction authors, posited that Earth itself is one big organism, and we're the reproductive part. We're to go to colonize other planets. You know, the beauty of good science fiction is that it makes you think, and it gives you ways to examine our own human condition in an unusual way. I remember a book he wrote that I thought was really super, about the Starship Troopers. They made a movie of it. And the book was really thoughtful. It had you thinking. It was an adventure, but there was a message in there. More like a question in there. Why men fight? And the movie was such a dud because the guy wanted to live when the Germans were in his neighborhood shooting off V2s during World War II. So that movie fizzled. Good sci-fi, and I'm talking the things that really make us think as humans. You know, Star Trek, they don't ask the big questions. There was a series called Farscape that did ask some pretty wild stuff because it makes us think, and it is a way that we as a species can create an artificial, I don't know what you'd call it, view or whatever, against which we can compare ourselves. But the problem there is that this fictional thing we've created is from us. We're humans, and so humanity is going to show through it. One speculative idea: imagine if there was a planet colonized by several species of sentient beings who function intellectually and have technology. You would see in the buildings and everything we make our own humanity, accommodating our own humanity and expressing it, and it would stand very distinct from all the others. All the things that are so different about them. Because just as there are people in this world who are so different from one another in temperament and culture, think of it taken off even further. And humanity also does embrace our differences. There are great cultural differences sometimes. Compare, you know, a Northern European, say, from Norway with someone who's living in India and the culture in India, how different it is. Or the culture, say, in Namibia. I keep thinking Deutsche Südwestafrika, but they call it Namibia now. How different it would be in those deserts there. Or say, in the jungles, say, of Southeast Asia, say, in Cambodia, the very different culture. So our humanity has a shared principle, but that principle expresses in great variety, and is something to consider. It's good being human. It's fun, it's an adventure. And the things we consider mysteries now, we're just scratching the surface. But our whole historical record tells who we are, how we see ourselves, what we favor and such. And we have a whole rune devoted just to us. I want to wish you luck with your studies. Keep at it. Remember, the door to insight opens inward, especially with the runes. Don't force. Draw in. Have a good one. This is Uncle Thor from the Trollwise Press.